people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest as it pertains to the Katie Taylor versus Chantel Cameron trilogy. The next fight date and the venue has been confirmed. That she's willing to run it back with Chantel when she really doesn't have to. It shows her competitive spirit. They're 1-1 with each other, but Katie Taylor wants a tiebreaker. What's Katie Taylor going to do differently in a third fight? Does she need to do anything differently? And what about Chantel? She certainly needs to. She lost the rematch. She's got a new trainer now. She's not with Jamie Moore or Nigel Travis. She's boxing out of the Steel City Boxing Gym. What adjustments does she plan on making? Because she needs to make adjustments. What won Chantel Cameron the first fight is Katie Taylor got off to a rocky start, looking to create space and move around, moving lateral, back on the ropes, trying to set up a counter shot, but being unable to because Chantel is bigger and longer than she is. Fundamentally sound, too, jabbing her way in. Two good legs under her, managing the distance and getting in safely with good straight punches from the outside. She was able to bully Katie Taylor for long spells in the early goings of that fight, and it wasn't until much later on that Katie started having success by staying in the pocket and letting her hands go. That's what won her the second fight. That she's still faster in the pocket than Chantel, even though she's older. Now, the Irish woman will be back in Dublin in the first half of the year. Eddie Hearn has confirmed that Katie Taylor's next fight will take place on Saturday, May 25th at Dublin's 3 Arena, live on DAZN. The hope is to stage the historic trilogy bout with Cameron, but there is also the possibility that both fighters take interim fights before their third encounter. Interim fights? Before their third encounter, and therefore Taylor may take care of one of her mandatory commitments. Wasn't expecting that. Would be ideal for Chantel to get a little bit more time in with Grant Smith over there in Sheffield, iron out the strategy, develop a rapport. Who does she fight in the mean in between time? Well, I've always wanted to see Chantel Cameron box former champion Christina Lenardatu, a two-time WBO champion at this weight. That's a spicy fight they could make in the mean in between time if she's willing. Cameron is, in fact, the #1 contender for 3 of Taylor's super lightweight belts, with Sarah Achieng the mandatory challenger for the WBO. So maybe Katie fights Sarah, gets that mandatory out the way, and Chantel fights, I don't know, Christina Lenardatu or somebody else. Somebody in the ranks. Cross that bridge when you get to it. As stated, it would be ideal for Chantel because she's got a new trainer. She's got a new corner. She needs some time in with Grant Smith to develop the strategy and work on things, because she's the one that has to make an adjustment. She's the one that has to change a bit ahead of what could be a Katie Taylor trilogy. What does she have to change? She's already several years younger than Katie Taylor. She is, in fact, bigger and stronger. What lost her the second fight? What lost her the rematch? And it's that Katie Taylor, she still has more hand speed mid-range to inside than Chantel does. She spent a little bit more time there, stood her ground. Instead of moving around and creating space and trying to set up a counter shot, she flustered Chantel with combinations mid-range to inside. She stood her ground. So maybe the adjustment that Chantel has to make isn't a particularly big one or a dramatic one. It might be centered around shot selection. What punches you're throwing and when you're throwing them. You've already shared the ring with Katie 2 times. You beat her the first time, she beat you the second. So you know who you're dealing with going into the third. Maybe it's all about shot selection the third time out. Chantel being younger, bigger, and stronger than Katie, that's still working for her. As much as I love Katie Taylor, time isn't on her side. She squeezes in a fight between now and the time she fights Chantel for a third time. By the time she fights her, she will be that much older. Isn't she 37? We're saying they want to do this thing over the summer months. Look at where we are now. Look at where we are. We're in February. You want to do a fight in the summer, that don't give you a whole lot of time to work with. Fuck's going on here? I don't know. But Chantel could make good use of the time if the time is allotted to her, and it might be. We'll see. Katie Taylor can take the head punches. We saw that in the Pursoon fight. We saw that in the Serrano fight. We saw that in her fights with Cameron. Both of them. Katie can take the head punches, but nobody, and I mean nobody, likes it to the body. So maybe Chantel Cameron makes a conscious effort to dig. Go to Katie's body. She's getting older. She's in her late 30s. That'll take her legs away, make her more of a stationary target. Oftentimes when Katie Taylor's throwing combinations mid-range to inside, she leans over. Her chin is exposed. Most can't capitalize on that because Katie's so fast, mid-range to inside, but she can be caught. She can be caught with uppercuts mid-range to inside, and Chantel's got some good ones. So maybe the strategy for the third fight is centered around shot selection. We'll see what adjustments Chantel makes. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, it's the official press release for what is supposed to be the Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia fight that will in fact be billed as a pay-per-view here in the United States via DAZN. There was some speculation that it might not be a pay-per-view. I don't know why anybody would think that. If Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis was billed as a pay-per-view, why wouldn't Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia be billed as a pay-per-view? I saw some squabbling and some arguments, some speculation since the fight's announcement that it may not be billed as a pay-per-view. That may be specific to the territory. Maybe it's not a pay-per-view in the UK or outside of America, but in the States, it most certainly is a pay-per-view, and why wouldn't it be? Ryan Garcia was the other half of a very big show, a very big card last year, proving his drawing power, as Gervonta Davis had never done numbers like that, and he'd already been on pay-per-view 5 times. Despite it being on pay-per-view 5 times, Gervonta couldn't crack 300,000 until he added Ryan into the equation. That brought in over $1 million. So it goes without saying that his upcoming fight with Devin is set to be a pay-per-view, presumably at the Barclays Center, though not if Ryan Garcia has anything to say about it. Ryan, who says, this decision has nothing to do with New York City, everything to do with business, and what I believe is the best move for my career. He wants the fight moved. What? He wants it moved to Las Vegas, even though it's already been announced for New York at the Barclays Center. What? In case you haven't heard, that's the latest. That's what's going on now. Ryan Garcia has publicly expressed an interest in having the fight moved from New York over to Las Vegas because he thinks that's the better location for it. A lot of people do, because Devin's from Vegas and Ryan is from the West Coast. Would make the fight more accessible to those on the West Coast if it's in Vegas as opposed to New York. They ain't got to fly across the country to see it, to be there. People at FightHype.com seem to agree with Ryan, saying, guessing he just found out about the money they're going to miss out on if it's at the Barclays. A little late to make that change, though. Why wasn't it in Vegas in the first place? Canelo's fight, presumably May 4th. This fight is too close to that fight. In anticipation of what's supposed to be Canelo Alvarez's next ring appearance, availability in Vegas at or around that time was scarce. So it looks like the event's coordinators decided to take it to the East Coast, even though neither Ryan or Devin are from the East Coast. That doesn't mean it can't do well there. It can at the Barclays Center. But if the question is, why didn't they do it in Vegas in the first place? It's because it might conflict with another show happening around that time. Devin Haney has a very different take on why Ryan now wants to move the fight. He's saying this dude is planning his escape. Ho-ass, talk that tough talk, but now he's talking like a bitch. He thinks Ryan is trying to get out of it. Ryan says he wants the fight moved to the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and he's doing everything he can at this time to have it moved. Can he do that? The fight is essentially made. The fight is made. The location has been announced. It won't be long now before the tickets go on sale. And now is when Ryan chooses to do this. Why would he do this now? Could Canelo have anything to do with it? Well, I thought Canelo's fight happening at or around that time was the reason they didn't do it in Vegas. You're saying he's the reason he wants it there? Yeah, because what if Canelo doesn't fight in May? By now, everybody knows what's going on with Canelo and that he may not fight in May. If he doesn't, there won't be any issues doing their show in Vegas if Canelo doesn't fight in May, based on what's going on between him and the PBC, all this stuff about Charlo, all this stuff about Munguia, that instability. The guarantee that isn't guaranteed unless he fights Munguia. You think that's what Ryan is thinking? I think it's possible. Yet another possibility is what Devin is suggesting, that this is just his escape plan. He wants to get out of the fight. This will be his excuse, that he wanted it in Vegas even though it was supposed to go down at the Barclays Center, though he picks after the fight is announced and the location to decide he wants it in Vegas. Isn't it too late? Could this cause the fight to fall apart? Should people be worried? I've seen a growing sentiment expressed. Skepticism that this fight won't happen, that somehow, some way, Ryan will find a way out. And this would lend credence to that notion, wouldn't it? That where it's supposed to go down at the Barclays, it was announced to go down at the Barclays. Now Ryan wants to move it.
He's pulled out of fights before. He pulled out of the Linares fight. He pulled out of the Jojo Diaz fight.
So I can see where people are coming from and where that skepticism originates. I understand that. It's my own interpretation that the only reason Ryan is doing this is because he's cashing out. So put your thinking caps on, kids. For a guy who doesn't really know if he's going to win his next fight, but he wants to maximize his earnings, optimize profits, that guy might want to fight in Vegas so he can make more money from it, because he knows there's a good chance he loses this one.
If the guy's cashing out, the only way that I can explain Ryan all of a sudden wanting to do this fight where he wasn't interested before, it's gotta be because he's cashing out.
So thing about him wanting it moved to Vegas, it could fuck up the fight. It very well could. If it doesn't and the fight goes through, now that we know
Gervonta's supposed to be fighting Frank Martin in late spring or early summer.
Which fight do you think is going to bring in more pay-per-views? Which fight do you think is going to do better at the box office? Gervonta versus a guy nobody was asking him to fight, or Devin and Ryan?
Which fight do you think brings in more pay-per-views?
Gervonta Davis's drawing power is grossly exaggerated because, as stated, he was on pay-per-view 5 times before he fought Ryan, and he never even cracked 300,000 buys, let alone 500,000, let alone over 1 million. It wasn't until Ryan came into it that he did real numbers, and I don't think he's going to do real numbers with Frank Martin.
Frank's not as popular as Ryan.
Devin's already been on pay-per-view 2 times, didn't do astronomical numbers, but he's been on pay-per-view 2 times. Ryan was in last year's biggest pay-per-view, wasn't he? At least in America.
So if this fight goes through, this fight between Devin and Ryan, there is the potentiality that this may do better numbers than Gervonta's next fight.
And if it does better numbers than Gervonta's next fight, it's going to be a little hard to maintain that bubble where Gervonta Davis is supposed to be the face of boxing. I don't see how.
If you go back to doing just north of 200,000 buys,
And this does whatever it does.
right?
400,000, 500,000, maybe 6, maybe more. Who knows?
How the fuck is Gervonta the face of boxing?
If Ryan Garcia doesn't fuck this up, and he might. New York City or Las Vegas? Devin Haney beats him.
Ryan's all hung up about where it goes down. It doesn't matter where it goes down. You're gonna get beat.
New York, Vegas, or the moon?
You're gonna get beat.
Upstairs at welterweight, Eddie Hearn has reiterated his interest in Jaron Boots Ennis, saying, I would love to sign Jaron Boots Ennis. I'm sure that he would, and I'm sure that if he had that opportunity, if the Ennis team decided to go with Eddie instead of what they are doing, Jaron Ennis would have a lot more stability in his career right now. Ennis, 26, was upgraded to the status of a champion as a consequence of Terrence Crawford's contractual obligation to negotiate a rematch with Errol Spence Jr. that now isn't happening. Philadelphia's Ennis most recently recorded a spectacular 10th round knockout of Roman Villa in Atlantic City back in July of last year. That's not so recent.
Why not?
Because we're actually closer to July of this year than July of last year. We've had some very brief chats, Hearn said. At the end of the day, we'd love to make Boots a part of the Matchroom team. He is one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. We will see where it goes.
Bullshit!
Jaron Boots Ennis ain't no fucking pound-for-pound fighter for beating a Pastor Dulorme and a basic Roman Villa. I'm sorry. But if you think the kid's got a ceiling, that's fine. Potential.
Potential, he can have potential, buckets of potential, but pound for pound.
Being a pound-for-pound fighter is not about potential. It's about results. It's about what you've proven against proven competition. Quality competition. Not overmatched guys like Sergey Lipinets or Thomas Dulorme or Roman Villa, who we all knew he was going to beat. At least I did. I said he was going to knock him out easy.
Hearn wants to bring him into the fray, so he's talking him up.
He's hoping to enhance his American stable by complementing Jesse Bam Rodriguez, Devin Haney, Edgar Berlanga, Alicia Baumgartner.
He wants to bring Jaron Boots Ennis into the fray. Look.
Listen, I don't blame him. Boots shows something. He shows that he's got something. He is the kind of fighter that you would want to sign. There is potential there. Polarization aside, narratives aside, and all that stuff about Crawford.
I understand Eddie wanting to sign him, but I also understand that Boots doesn't seem to have the smartest team.
They seem to be entangled with the PBC in one way, shape, or form. They're supposed to be fighting their mandatory challenger, Cody Crowley, very soon, as ordered by the IBF, and it just so happens that Cody is represented by TGB. TGB, which is just another way of saying PBC.
Tom Brown
Is rumored to be driving the car over there at the PBC while Al Heyman is missing in action.
That's the rumor.
So Jaron Ennis' next fight, for one reason or another, could very well land on the PBC, not because he's a PBC fighter, not yet, but because Cody Crowley is. But here's the problem.
What?
Per a tweet from the Boxing Voice via their sources, Cody Crowley might pull out of a mandatory title fight ordered by the IBF versus Boots due to coming off eye surgery, according to someone with knowledge of the situation. 4 months ago, Crowley was offered Boots for $300,000. Present date elimination fight offer was $200,000, $100,000 less. Crowley allegedly still wants to fight for June, but I'm told is expecting a better offer than just $200,000.
So they're offering him less money this year than they offered him last year. What's the difference between this year and last year?
Last year, Showtime was in the picture. This year, they're not. Last year, due to Jaron Ennis' arrangement with Showtime, they were the ones bankrolling his fights. They were the ones paying for his slots.
And now?
This year, the situation is more messy because Jaron Ennis' longtime handler, Cameron Duncan, he passed away, but Jaron Ennis is still under contract with him.
How?
There's a stipulation in the contract that should Jaron Ennis become a champion while the contract is active, that will, in effect, extend the contract. And even though Cameron Duncan is dead, his company went to his wife. Jaron Ennis is in the process of taking that company to court in order to achieve free agency and obtain over $1 million or $1 million for his troubles. We'll see what happens with that. Cody,
He's the one who's represented by TGB. In essence, he's the PBC fighter, and he's the reason why this fight might land on the PBC if it happens.
though I happen to think, if Jaron Ennis many weeks ago would have taken Eddie up on his offer, decided to go with Matchroom instead of being left in limbo, I feel like his career would have a lot more stability, more traction than it has right now, that Matchroom could help him sort out that situation with Boxing Now.
Cameron Duncan's old promotional company.
Kind of like how they helped out Rocky Hernandez sort out his situation with Disrupt Boxing.
Disrupt, which was really just Probellum by another name, the now defunct Probellum that still had the contract on Rocky, and Matchroom looks like they helped him get out of it because they signed him.
Then he lost Shockey Foster, and it is what it is, that's what it was. I feel like they could help Jaron Ennis in all the ways they helped Rocky, but Jaron Ennis, he does have a higher ceiling than a Rocky Hernandez, and he is, for better or worse, a reigning champion. But it seems to me like he wants to go with the PBC. He wants to be there.
They haven't signed him yet.
He's not an according to Hoyle PBC fighter yet, but I just get the sense that he wants to be. And given their current situation, I don't know.
Sign with them, he might be fucked. They don't seem to have a lot of fight dates for the fighters that have been fighting under their banner that are now floating away.
And that's where he wants to go. Go ahead. See where that gets you.